At the moment, your council has the right to set an eligibility threshold for what support they will give you depending on the severity of your disability. Once you've passed the eligibility stage, as far as the government's concerned, there are then two types of social care user. There are people who have enough of their own money to be able to pay for their own social care needs, or there are people that don't and need support from their council to pay for those services. What my research shows is that actually people broadly fall into three different levels in the way that they perceive and receive social care. The first level I call passive receivers. Typically they get given what they're given and they don't question, they believe it's their lot and it's not really their position to ask for anything different. The second level I call deciders. Deciders are people who feel that they have the right to choose between different alternatives and options that are available to them. The third level are people that I call enablers. Enablers are people who actively make the best of their own social care situation. They go one step further than that. They actually manage to help others to achieve the same. You could argue that most people, before direct payments, were at the level of passive receiver. You got given the care that you needed, typically provided to you directly from the council or from an organisation that they had selected, and you had little or no choice about how that was actually provided. After direct payments came along, some people like me who got given the money were able to move up a level to being deciders. That was certainly my experience, because actually what happened was that direct payments allowed somebody like me to employ a care worker directly, so I didn't have to go through a third party to constantly negotiate what needed to happen with that person. I could have a direct conversation with them. What I found was that those people who had been passive receivers, rather than being turned into deciders like me, were actually being pushed into becoming passive consumers. What I mean by passive consumers are people who get given the money and then are expected to somehow miraculously know how to meet their own needs and rely on the market to provide for those needs, when actually they're not necessarily equipped to know what they require, nor can they articulate to the marketplace what the market needs to deliver to them. So you could say in many ways that actually they're quite out of control in managing their own care needs. So what was really difficult to understand is why wasn't £20 billion worth of social care funding that was being pushed in this direction making difference for vast swathes of people? The conclusion that I came to and that the research came to was that the money is not the only answer. It is a very small part of the solution. Actually, the focus needed to move away from budget giving and budget holding as being the conversation. Well, actually, no, it shouldn't be the only thing that we talk about. We should talk about the wider issues. It seemed to me that one of the problems around the rhetoric for self-directed support and personal budgets is that it's all about me and I and the individual. There's something missing about we and about the wider responsibility that we have towards each other. Throughout my research, it was clear that once people had personal budgets given to them, that actually the kinds of changes they wanted to make in their lives were really only possible when they started doing things in collaboration with one another. It created a pathway for people to make personal budgets work for them and to go from being passive receivers to deciders all the way through to enablers. And then once they themselves had become enablers, they were able to then support the next tranche of people who were coming through and getting personal budgets to move up those levels as well. So in order to deliver this locally in a way that makes sense, it was important to articulate what elements were needed in a peer support programme that would make it a success. Any good programme of peer support needs to include 6 key elements, and I've chosen to call these the 6 pillars of peer support. For a programme of peer support to stand up and be successful, it needs to be underpinned by these 6 pillars. Take one away and the whole thing collapses.